He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Before you go, can you hear me okay? Because I got my outboard running. I'm trying to run from the weather to get home. I think we found, well, I don't think, I know we found the last discernible anchor. The one that Kelly had found all those years ago.
Oh my God, you found it!
That's fantastic. That's great news. Well done.
Thanks very much, yeah. It's pretty exciting.
Right, well, we didn't think we'd be back here this soon, did we? Yet here we are. I'm Hamish Williams, and this is Kelly Tarlton's final treasure hunt. In our last episode, we signed off on what we thought was the end of the series. Between Brendan Wade, Keith Gordon and Dave Moran, everyone involved hoped that it wouldn't be the final word, but based on where we were at with the treasure hunt, it was likely that we needed divers with access to more time, resources and warmer weather. There was a defined area to search, but it was still large enough that it was going to be a significant challenge with no concrete plans for next steps. But just as we were getting ready to publish our final episode, I got an email from Fiona Tarlton, and attached to it was a series of scanned, handwritten documents. The notes were dated Monday, the 11th of January, 1982, and identified as being from the crew of a boat named the Discover 2. A crew that included Hung Nguyen, Peter Pettigrew, and Kelly Tarlton. Scrawled in Kelly's handwriting are detailed sextant and compass coordinates next to a label, Big Anchor, 1769, the first lost, rope broke. You might remember the saga of these notes back in episode 5. They'd been sold at auction, and according to the auction records, the buyer had been Kelly's brother-in-law, Peter Pettigrew. Peter was adamant that the auction house had made a mistake in telling us that he was the successful bidder of Kelly's notes on the Discernible anchors, so much so that he actually asked them to prove it.
What I didn't know was that Webb's kept such good records of that auction, and through your contacts, somebody got Webb's to look back and find out who bought the archive at the auction. And lo and behold, it was me. I then asked Webb's if they could actually scan the tax invoice and send me a copy, and they did. I finally believed them 100%. I bought certain things that I thought the family might like to have one day in the future. So I bought the Alsamine archive and the Discernible archive. It cost about $1,000. And not long after that, we sold our house in Auckland and started to live up on Purua Peninsula near Kerikeri. And about 100 cartons were packed up with my library and all our stuff and went into a lockup at Waipapa. And that's where that archive has been ever since, until a couple of weeks ago. We went to the lockup, we got some very big, strong people to start getting stuff out. We started looking at carton by carton. The very last carton at the very back of the lockup on the ground level, right the lowest one of all, was item 65, Kelly's archives. So that's why we've got them now.
So to your knowledge, you never actually had the coordinates until you found them a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, no, I've never looked at what was in that big box at all. You know, it's been in a lockup in Waipapa ever since.
Peter scanned the notes and sent them through. Now, based on this information, we knew exactly where to look. The precise spot Kelly anchored his boat. This is our X marking the spot on the treasure map. This document was instantly consumed by Keith Gordon and Dave Moran. The Tarlton family were informed, and then it was sent to Brendan, who was currently at sea in his chief marine engineer role on a ship somewhere off the east coast. Brendan went as far as to enlist the help of the ship's master and the first mate. Between them, they were able to triangulate the position of where the anchor might be within a few metres. This all might sound simple, but trust me, it's not. And to be honest, up until now, we've maybe been underselling Brendan's skills.
Get an email, stop what you're doing and read this. And the paper had the sextant angles from Kelly, in Kelly's hand, of the location of the third anchor. And you go, Eureka, we've got it. But have you? You got some numbers on a page, great. You got some drawings, great. So spent quite a bit of time digesting this. Luckily I was at work. So all the officers on board, the engineers and the bridge team are pretty highly qualified. As a part of their training, they all have to do this course, which involves horizontal sextant angles. And there's a little bit of maths to do this that the boys very graciously taught me on board. And we used our fancy chart software instead of doing it on paper charts, but I've got a chart now that I've done the same thing on just to prove a point because, feels good. And now I've got that about ready to be mounted on my wall because I've got all this data that I'd recorded over the last trip, or the last two expeditions. I can then take this position and I can overlay it over the top of all of the old tracks and routes I've done. The most interesting part about all of this is it is nowhere near the mark we got with the magnetometer, 300 metres away. We've got a track with the magnetometer going straight over the top of this mark and we didn't pick it up. So I actually kind of thought, I actually just want to go up and disprove this because it doesn't match anything else. We've got this mag spot. That's where the anchor is.
On the morning of the 10th of July 2025, while on school holidays at Tutukaka in Northland with Ellie and their two kids, Brendan seized his opportunity.
But the weather's horrendous. It's midwinter. Like flooding in Nelson. Auckland got hammered. The far north got obliterated for a time as well. We were staying up in Tutukaka. Nangaroo River was just about over the banks. But there's a 6-hour window on the Thursday from about 8 a.m. till about 4 p.m. where it drops off and dies as this, the centre of this thing moves through. I was comfortable. It needs to be said for the record, I don't do things that are unsafe. I haven't survived this long doing my job by doing unsafe things. It's a calculated risk and I've got a lot of safety gear. But it was still a lot worse than I thought it was going to be.
Five hours later, we received this phone call from him, still on the boat.
I had spray going over the top of the boat. Took me about an hour and a half to get to the spot I wanted to be, which would normally take me 20 minutes to get to. And I sort of had a chat to Kelly on the way out here, and I said, Kelly, mate, you got to give me something here. No one else is this dedicated. This is ridiculous. I shouldn't even be out here. You've got to actually help me out now. And so I threw my boy over on the mark, and I set my anchor. And then you kind of have to muck around to get yourself positioned right so you can be close enough to the ROV to follow the line down without running out of string. And Kelly must have been laughing because as soon as I set, the wind died and the boat swung around and was facing the opposite direction. So I had to pull up the anchor again, my anchor, and then reset again. And then the wind came back up and I dragged off. And I had to pull up my anchor and go back. And finally the wind died and the sun just came out. Everything kind of calmed down and I dropped the anchor And I dropped my ROV down. In about 15 to 20 minutes of searching, I got to one extremity of my cable on the ROV, and then I turned around and made another path coming back towards where I was. And then out of the gloom, this massive ring. And you kind of look at it and you think, oh, maybe could that be natural? No, it's not natural. And your visit at this point is only down to, I think I had a meter and a half of visibility, which any diver will tell you don't even bother diving in that. And so this ring turned out to be the top ring on the shank of the anchor. And then as I sort of moved further down, you could start seeing the shank of the anchor laying down on the seabed. And then out of the gloom, this massive fluke just sticking vertically up in the air. It's an incredible sight. I have had a quick chat to Dave and Keith. They're very keen to get up and actually get down there and touch it. And I think that's something really special for them too. You know, it's a solid physical connection to a lost mate, which is, you know, you can't put a value on that. As far as I'm concerned, I think it's fantastic. It puts to bed a couple of really cool mysteries, and you know, it gives New Zealand another fantastic historical connection with our past. Oh, and I just saw a whale broach.
Brendan recorded video and took photos of the anchor with his ROV, and you just have to see them. We've put them on the RNZ website on the show page. What it clearly shows is one of the anchor's flukes stuck so hard into rock that the main shank, that's the long bit of the anchor, is actually suspended horizontally above the seabed. This would have happened when the St. Jean Baptiste was pulling against it with all 600 tonnes of its weight during the storm in late December 1769. The anchor itself has become the foundation of a healthy reef. Deep purple sea sponges, algae of every colour, and a lone leather jacket circles the relic. That's a type of fish, not an item of clothing, just for those wondering. The anchor has been in this exact position for 256 years, and it's 43 years since its last visitors. The anchor is now not only a part of the history of New Zealand, Aotearoa, it's a part of Doubtless Bay. As the discoverer of the location, Brendan does have a duty of care, and that's to report the find to Heritage New Zealand, seeing as it predates 1900. He contacted Bill Edwards, who we spoke with in the last episode. Bill's based at Heritage NZ's Kitty office.
Ali tells me you're okay with me recording this. I just wanted to make sure that is the case.
Yes, of course.
Fantastic. After the podcast finished and all of this other stuff, I had an itch to scratch, and I went up and I found the serval anchor.
That's fantastic. That's great news. Well done.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's been it's pretty exciting. We were talking about it on the way up to I was again going on holiday with the kids, and I said to Ali on the way up, what happens if we actually find it? That's where you come in, Bill. I was hoping we could have a bit of a chat about
certainly
what the process is. What do I do? Who do I talk to?
Yeah, well, the first thing is thank you for contacting us. That's really the most important step is contacting us in the first place, Heritage New Zealand, and then I think the other point is we can get a lot of information from the site. We can understand more about what actually happened, over 250 years ago. I guess long term, having a really good record of where it is for a start, GPS data would be good. Some photographs so we can look at it.
I really, as far as I'm concerned, this was found by Kelly, and I've just followed up on his work. And my understanding was a lot of the conversations that were had way back then were that it was to stay in place, and it was hopefully, with all parties in agreement, going to become some form of a bit of a national treasure up there that people can go and dive on and enjoy.
And the other thing is, it's not just nationally important; it's probably internationally important. Ministry of Culture and Heritage have a team which deals with artefacts, which is essentially what you've got there. And I think its significance is very high, and it relates to the history of New Zealand. So therefore, there's something called the Protected Objects Act, sure. and that will probably kick in. And I also think it should be recorded as a find site, as an archaeological find site, so that gives it some form of protection as well.
Okay.
The big thing is kind of have an overall plan.
Yeah.
I mean, finding the object is one thing, but telling its story and looking after it for future generations is the other story.
I agree.
So the important thing is to think about the story of the object and think about how it's going to be preserved for future generations, as well as the story.
The story is always at the heart of a great treasure hunt. And now, with the hunt completed, a success, Brendan Wade joins the names of that story: De Surville, Ranganui, and Tarlton. Kelly Tarlton's family have been incredibly supportive of this series in so many different ways and at so many different times. It's felt as though he's been present with us. Brendan couldn't wait to share the find with the family, and at short notice, we managed to gather Rosemary, Kelly's wife, and his daughter Fiona to meet with us.
That's the ring of the anchor.
It is.
Oh my God, you found it. Woo!
So, yeah.
And so is Dad's coordinates?
Very close.
Very close. Okay.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
This is the video I took the moment I found it.
Oh,
Right.
is it?
Oh
Is
yeah,
it?
there we go.
Yeah.
That's a fluke.
And that's the
That's the
same
fluke.
angle as the photo.
And
that
it's
we
not
still
all
have.
covered in reef. We can actually really see it.
That is amazing.
Woo! That's
So
awesome.
we
That's
got it.
That
fantastic.
is,
Look at this. My hands are still shaking. Thinking
that
about it
is,
now.
that is so
That's
good.
magnificent.
Look how nice
That
is
is
that?
so
By the time you hear this, Brendan's find will have made national news, confirming the existence and the exact location of the oldest European artefact in New Zealand. It's a significant find, and actually, its discovery has solved a few historical mysteries. We've been calling this the third De Surville anchor because it was the third one to be found, but actually, it now seems clear it was the first one to be dropped. The way it's sitting jammed horizontally in the reef makes that indisputable. We know from De Surville's journal that the first anchor held fast until the cable snapped, while the other two had been dragged along the seabed. And I guess that technically makes it the oldest of the three anchors. Interestingly, it's also not the same type of anchor as what hangs in Te Papa or is on display at Te Ahu Museum in Kaitaia. It's about 1 metre shorter and shaped a bit differently, with curved flukes. From what we understand, that suggests it's actually a British design. Now, we don't know exactly where or how it came to be on the St John Baptiste, but considering they were sailing between multiple ports, it was likely traded or bought as nothing more than a functional piece of equipment. Just to be clear, we are very certain this anchor is from the St John Baptiste. There are no other records of lost anchors in this area. And what's more, I have just this moment, while recording this with you, received an email from Bill Edwards from Heritage New Zealand's Kirikiri office, where he says, by the description of the location and its physical shape and scale, it is almost certainly the third anchor associated with De Surville and his ship, the St John Baptiste. As such, the anchor is one of the oldest relics of early European contact with New Zealand. As for what happens to the anchor now, that's still to be determined. Given how firmly it's jammed into the rock, it seems unlikely it'll be recovered like the other two. And personally, I kind of hope it stays just where it is, suspended in time. Maybe you, listening to this, will get a chance to dive down and see it for yourself. I'm Hamish Williams, and this was Kelly Tarlton's Final Treasure Hunt. think Kelly would have made of this? You know, using the ROV and, you know, what Brendan's put in, you know, the effort that he's put down there.
Probably go, took you bloody long enough.
Kelly Tarlton's Final Treasure Hunt is written and presented by me, Hamish Williams. Our producers are Ali Callahan, William Ray, Phil Vine and Justin Gregory. Our sound engineers are William Saunders, Phil Benge and Mark Chesterman. Our production coordinator is Brianna Juritich-Gregg and the executive producer is Tim Watkin. Special thanks to the Tarlton family for their support and trust in making this podcast.